To today's webinar, Aligning Sales and Marketing with Funnel Metrics. My name's Craig Rosenberg, and I'm known for two things. One is I'm the editor of the sales and marketing blog, The Funnelholic, which might be your big clue as to why I'm here talking about funnels today. As well, I'm the co-founder and chief analyst for Topo. At Topo, we work with companies to help optimize their sales and marketing machines, and we do so by researching hundreds of high-growth companies, top to bottom, to figure out how they are growing at the rate that they're growing and take those learnings and help our clients go implement against what we found, those best practices. One of those things we always find is visibility and the ability to track funnels. As you'll see throughout this presentation, I get really excited when Bonnie starts telling me all the things that she's doing to help people, help organizations gain more visibility into their funnels. I hope you don't find it distracting. I hope you're inspired by how inspired I am. So with that, why don't I have Bonnie? Bonnie, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll get going.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Crater, and I'm CEO of Full Circle CRM. And just as a little background, Full Circle CRM helps companies like Intel and Riverbed and Level 3 Communications accurately track and measure the performance of their marketing campaigns against revenue. And I'm excited to be here today with Craig because we share a common passion around funnels.
Yeah, we do. It's always a learning. It's amazing because as with the name The Funnelholic, I'm sort of looked to as a person who is a expert in funnels, and certainly I consider myself to be knowledgeable. But when I talk to you, I learn at least 5 to 10 new things. So I'm really excited as well today. But as a way to kick off, Bonnie, why don't you talk about why, in your opinion, why organizations need funnels, and then as I warned you before, I do have what I think to be a very difficult question for you, but I'll save it. First, tell us more about why you need funnels. Okay,
well, I'm a little worried about the difficult question, but why we need funnels. Funnel metrics really tell you how your sales and marketing operations work. So whenever I would go into a new company as a new VP of marketing, I would always draw a funnel and try to figure out, okay, what is the volume that comes in from the top and what's coming out at the bottom, and what are the steps in between, and how are the leads getting converted. And so when you have a funnel, you can measure really important things. You can measure the volume of leads that are coming in and how they pass through stages. You can measure the conversion rates between the stages to see how efficient you are at moving the leads through from stage to stage. And then you can see how fast the leads are moving through the funnel and measure velocity. So those are the 3 key metrics that really help you understand how the sales and marketing operation is really working.
Okay, so I agree with everything you just said. Here's the question I get, and it's always there's somebody in the crowd whenever I'm speaking, or if I'm like at a client site and there's more than 3 people in the room, they'll say, well, Craig, the buyer, right, doesn't work in a linear fashion. They don't work in a straight line. So doesn't that make the funnel obsolete? And I'd love to hear your reaction to that one.
Yeah, I've got a big smile on my face thinking, okay, well, of course, in today's B2B marketing world, the funnel is not an exact representation of what happens. Of course, leads come in and some of them drop out and they need to be put back in the top of the funnel, and sometimes they need to be put on nurture for a while. But in order to actually draw a chart that's readable, the funnel is a really nice approximation of what happens in reality. If you actually tried to draw the real thing, it would be just some spaghetti drawing that no one could possibly follow.
You mean you can't track it in a spaghetti funnel? I'm not even sure we could use the word funnel. It'd be like some kind of, it was like the DNA, the Wilson-Crick or Watson-Crick DNA model. But
yeah, some curly-Q thing that no one can understand.
Yeah, actually, one other thing, I meant to bring up, because I think one thing that is interesting, it's certainly interesting to me, it might be interesting to the people listening, is this idea where you said, where you're a big believer in the funnel, but what you're representing here are 3 funnels. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, because I'm not sure everyone thinks of the world like that, right? They think of one big funnel.
Well, so you can have one big funnel, which would be all the sources of leads and demand generation for your company, from everything from sales and marketing to telesales and sales. But an easier way to look at the operations of each department is actually to separate a funnel out for each group. And that's one for the marketing funnel, one for the telesales funnel, and one for the sales funnel. And that's what you see here in this drawing. So this chart, you have marketing on the left, telesales in the middle, and sales on the right. And the numbers in the funnels are the number of prospects in each stage. So in the left-hand side, you see 231, then there's 467, then 9, then 6. And so this is the sort of a logical progression of the narrowing of the funnel. You'll notice that 467 is actually bigger than 231. That's because I guess there's a lot in the middle there. Maybe there's a story behind that particular number.
Yeah. I mean, would you say that there's limitations to look at the world as one big funnel?
Well, yeah, because you also want to really measure how each department is doing and how they're contributing to the business, and that gives you a really good way to understand how your business really operates. Maybe your telesales operation is totally great, and they're generating tons of leads, and actually are the source of most of your deals. I mean, who knows until you actually map it out.
That's so true. All right, well, let's dig into it. So here's what we're doing today is we're going to look at some common scenarios, and I'm pretty much sure that at least 90% of people listening today, if not 100%, when we bring up these scenarios, will nod their head and say, oh, yeah, of course. And what we'll do is we'll talk about the scenario, then let's look at kind of how we can use funnels and this visibility to help go really solve what the real problem is. So if we go to the next slide, this one is a classic, right? The end of quarter lead panic. And it's funny because I was telling Bonnie, my previous life, I ran a B2B demand gen company, a media company, right, where, we had hundreds of clients who bought, literally over the course of time, hundreds of thousands of leads. And, one of the things we did get was the marketer coming to us after, having some kind of meeting with sales and saying, I need to buy as many leads as I can, right? So they were in this end of quarter lead panic. And frankly, look, it was a good source of business for us, and it was like upside for us as a business. But the reality is, they were desperate and they were making any decision they could. And, I knew in some of the cases for many of the companies that bought these end of the quarter lead panic leads from us that it wasn't actually going to make anything better. And I think it's because they didn't know, right? They just knew they needed leads. And so, when we brought up that this was going to be one of the issues today, and it was something near and dear to my heart, and frankly, the ability to make better decisions about what you do at the end of the quarter is pretty exciting for me, just having seen many marketers have to go do this, right, and have to go run around and go buy without knowing, frankly, what the best decision is, just knowing that they have to go buy leads. And ultimately, like I said, the vast majority of those, people, the end of the quarter leads were, it didn't help enough, right? And so, anyway, it's my personal scenario, and I think we've all seen this, right? And it's this idea that the pipeline's not full enough. We need you to go stuff the pipeline with leads. And I think, talking today, I'm really excited to talk with you, Bonnie, about, how can we make that better decision? Because we all know it's going to happen, right? I know companies that are they speak at every event. They are the greatest lead gen companies in the world, and they have end of quarter lead panics. So anyway, I'm really excited to talk about real solutions for this. And so, Bonnie, do you want to talk about, what you've seen work and, how you can, take visibility and make better decisions with this end of quarter lead panic issue?
Yeah, and of course this has happened to me as a former VP of marketing.
Yeah.
This is, okay, let me show you the chart. This is the chart that I always wanted because what would happen is this, the CEO comes to me and says, hey, sales isn't quite making their number. We need, can you do something to help? And, we'd kind of scramble around and try to figure out something, and we would actually do something, but it wasn't really clear if that was really helping or not because we didn't have really good ways to really track the outcomes of all of the lead generation programs. But one of the things that would really help is to know which campaigns would be the best ones to run when you have a really short window like that. So here we have a chart which I want to go through, which is a cool chart, which you can see it's organized by campaign type. So all the conferences are grouped together, then banner ads and other, and then there's a webinar in the yellow box there. Then all the sales outbound activity, and then all the web-based activities. And then at the top of this chart you have stage. So this is the time and stage between a marketing qualified response and a sales accepted response. So that's one stage. And then another stage is sales accepted response to sales qualified response, and then sales qualified response to close. And then you can see below that there are days, and this is the time in stage by days. So if you look at the webinars, if you add up 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 7 is 17, that's 17 days. That's the shortest time among all of these different campaign types that would yield a deal. So this is like real data. It's a marketing qualified response, and then 17 days later, on average, the deal closes. So according to this data, if you run a webinar, you have a pretty good chance of closing some of those deals this quarter, particularly if you have enough time. Now you have to make sure you have enough time to actually develop the content and do a good job on that, because if you have a crummy webinar, you're not going to do much with that. So
that might be worse.
Yeah, it might be worse. You might turn off some customers. So so as long as it's not like the last week, if it's, say, it's sort of more towards the beginning of the quarter, you might have a chance of running one of these webinars and closing some deals.
Yeah. One thing I would just, if you don't mind, I'm not sure. So for you, a response is like an MQR is what some people would call an MQL, or do you want to just talk a little bit about the acronyms you would see on the screen?
Yeah. So we use R stands for response, and the reason that we do that is because our particular application runs on Salesforce, and Salesforce has two types of data in it. There's a lead and there's a contact in Salesforce to represent a person. And so this particular data is not necessarily a marketing qualified lead. It could be a marketing qualified contact, but that didn't sound too good. So we decided to call it a marketing qualified response, which applies to both leads and contacts in Salesforce.
Yeah, that's huge, right? Because a lot of us are constrained in our reporting because of the leads versus contacts issue. So
yeah, and so this allows you to count what's happening to both leads and contacts in your Salesforce database, which is big because most companies become very lead-centric because there aren't statuses and things on the lead. So this allows you to measure both leads and contacts.
Yeah, and the good, one thing I've been thinking about as I think about your guys' solution that I love is, because part of the idea of the end of quarter lead panic is the fact that since nobody has visibility, right? It's like the sales leader will come in, or the CEO, as you put in yours, and just say, go get me more leads, right? They don't even, without any visibility, they have the same problem the marketing person is. They just feel like I need more activity to go, drive demand. But, with Full Circle, the visibility is in Salesforce. So, you can almost think of a salesperson saying, I want more webinar leads. Right?
Yeah.
Just take a look at it, and that's better for the marketer. Right?
Yeah.
Because then you're on the same, you're on the same page, and then, someone's going to come to you instead of saying, at the end of quarter panic, and darn it, go get me 5,000 leads by the end of the month. They come and say, hey, you know what, we're kind of short, and I'm just looking, looking at the metrics. Can we do, can we get a webinar lead, webinar program in by the end of the quarter? That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting because, the alternative is what we do now, right? Which is kind of,
Oh man.
you sort of run around and kind of, you think, you're thinking and you're hoping that you're building the right type of campaign that actually is going to have the impact on revenue, but you really don't know. So this is much better.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so let's go into the next scenario here. So this campaign sucks, and if you're a marketer and you're listening to this and you can't nod your head and relate to this, then I want to talk to you because you must be the best marketer in the world. Because actually, let me take that back. I don't even know what you are because even the best marketers in the world get this, right? This is I would even, I would go as far as to say, everything, we're sort of talking about, comes down to this, we think of visibility as, almost this simple thing, this simple idea that, we want to be able to see what's happening. But for me, when we have these conversations, Bonnie, I think of, visibility helps with alignment, right? And, and this idea of this campaign sucks. Well, to know if it does or not, let's make sure that we have all of our information, right? And by having all that information, I feel like you'll never avoid that this campaign sucks because, as you and I have said before, sometimes this campaign sucks. But the reaction from sales a lot of times is their gut reaction. It could be anything. I was just talking to a marketer the other day where they were talking about how basically they have to set this they have this sort of timeline they go through with sales where look, the first call it month or so of passing a certain new type of lead into sales, they know they're going to get this inevitable reaction of these leads suck, or this sometimes this campaign's great and the marketer knows full well this thing, it all evens out over time, right? And one of the things is it's that first reaction, and the person I was telling is like, I got to wait it out, right? You just got to, the first reaction is like, the VP of sales asks a telesales rep, they say, oh, these leads are terrible because, the first, set of people that they called, it didn't work out, or, they're harder leads, let's say. In some cases, some lead sources are harder. But ultimately, if you can look at the numbers, right, and you can move past sort of anecdotal impressions and first impressions and really figure out what's going on. And not only that, look at, some lead sources are going to be really great up front, but not really great on the back end. And so anyway, I just think this visibility helps both sides really understand what's going on. It's really protection for marketing, but it also empowers sales to be able to look at things in the right way and really get a good feel for what's going on. And like I said, I don't know if you'll ever avoid this campaign sucks as a reaction, but you'll certainly be able to cut it down.
Oh, yeah. So, the rumor mill is rampant inside the sales organization. One guy or gal says, "Oh my God, I just called these leads and they're terrible." Then no one ever, everyone listens and no one calls the leads. It's really, really
the
amazing.
reputation in the call center is so big sometimes for lead sources.
Exactly. So you have a lot of dynamics like that, and what marketers often struggle with is that sales seems to have all the data, right? Yep. Sales has got all the opportunity information, all the amounts, all the the stages. It's all nicely laid out. And marketing often comes without much data, or they're using a marketing automation system where the data in the marketing automation system doesn't match the data in the CRM system, and so then they can't even do anything because the VP of marketing and the VP of sales are just looking at each other, going, "Okay, whose data is right?" Yep. And the sales VP always wins that argument. Always.
What are you talking about?
I've always that's the way it goes. Anyway,
of course.
So we're trying to help the marketers have a meaningful discussion. So you can, instead of this campaign sucks, let's say, yeah, some of them are going to work better than others. So let's look at what's working well and what's not working. So that's the next slide. So here's another chart that tells you which campaigns are succeeding. So if you have someone that's telling you that your web all your web leads are terrible. Okay, let's look at the chart here. So again, you have campaigns organized by campaign types. All the conferences are grouped together in the banner ads and emails, the outbound, webinar, and web, the different campaign types. And then you have stages, so inquiry to MQR, that's marketing qualified response, then marketing qualified response to SAR, for sales accepted response, that's the second column. Then the third column is sales accepted response to sales qualified response, and then sales qualified response to one. And then there's a total column, which is what's the conversion rate from inquiry to close. Yeah. So if you look at someone's telling you, hey, you really should run more conferences. Well, in this particular company, conferences have the lowest overall conversion rate, 3.6%. And they're telling you your web leads really stink. Well, actually, look at it. Okay, so inbound has a higher conversion rate, but web leads are doing pretty good at 7.4%. So this is what the data says, and it gives you an opportunity, if you're a marketer, to go talk to sales and have a real conversation about what's working, what's really working, and what's not really working.
Yeah, for sure. And as we keep talking, we'll talk about how to as throughout today's presentation, we talk more about sort of how we end up diagnosing everything as well. I think I think this is great. And again, one of the things that I think is really interesting is this ability to not hide this data anymore, right? And to make this data public so everyone can see how these leads are scoring and how these leads are converting. And so, like we said, I mean, if someone says this campaign sucks, I think, with this type of visibility, I think everyone would agree they suck. It wouldn't be a thing versus one,
yeah,
one
it's
person
not a
versus
secret.
the other.
Yeah, it's not a secret, and it's not a competition. It's the facts. So and everyone can see the facts because it's all in Salesforce, and the salespeople can see the facts, and the marketing people can see the facts, and the executives can all see the facts. So the facts bear out.
A lot of marketers try to track conversion rates. You know what I mean? They're, because of the blogosphere and all the stuff that's been written out there, everyone knows that they need to track conversion rates, but it seems to continue to be a struggle, and I'm just curious, how you've helped solve that and like what you perceive the problem to be.
Yeah, it's actually a sort of a software architecture problem. So there's a break in the data between the marketing automation system and the CRM system. So if you're trying to track this in the marketing automation system, it's really tough because it's really hard to synchronize two systems and do a good job with it. This is like the unsolved computer science problem. Yeah. And then there's also breaks in the data inside Salesforce. So we enhance Salesforce's, it's a terrific application to allow marketers to really take advantage of all the data that's inside Salesforce, and so our customers get an accurate account of what happened to those leads, and so you can get all the funnel metrics you want, volume, conversion rate, and velocity.
Terrific. It is. I was kind of setting you up because, well, maybe not. I think it's important, right? Because I think everyone would say, yeah, I track it, but it's a monumental struggle.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to have the horrible spreadsheet, and now I have Full Circle CRM. So
I'm sure we could have written that as one of the scenarios, since everyone's got horrible spreadsheets today. All right, let's jump into the next scenario. So the marketing to sales handoff is fluctuating, and I think, by the way, on this scenario, I think this is I think of this as like it's a nice flow from these leads suck, right, or this campaign sucks, because there's that second layer of lead conversion which happens when marketing hands leads to sales that is frankly critical to determining conversion and overall ROI, right? And so I got to tell you that, just being able to look at that is really important for companies, right? Because I'll just tell you, like, I get brought in all the time for people that say, well, we need to improve, right, our lead to opportunity conversion rate, or, we need to improve that's sort of the predominant one, right, Craig?
Yeah.
Sales development's creating leads. I mean, the lead marketing's creating leads. What's happening to the conversion rate and these types of things. And it's hard to wrap your hands around, what's happening in that sort of. I mean, could we call that the middle of the funnel, or would we call that
Yeah.
Roughly in that area?
Yeah, it's roughly the middle of the funnel, and it's the most tricky part, where you have, marketing is turning over their product to sales to pick up, and how does that interaction work? What are the rules? Is it working? Could you do it better?
Yeah, you're right. Tricky is the perfect word. Tricky and like mission critical. It's a bummer to put those two phrases together.
Yep.
Tricky and mission critical are not a good combination. And for me, a lot of times, I'm excited we can dig into the data, but there's two steps to this. One is basically sitting down and creating a qualified lead definition, or creating definitions about what a MQR might be, or what a sales accepted lead might be, right? And then also, I know you're big on talking about sales SLAs, which we'll look at in a little bit, but sitting down and having a process that you can agree on together, and creating definitions and expectations about what each side's going to go do is sort of first order of business. And then second order of business is, how do we see if that's working? And then third order of business is, not only how do we see how it's working, but like when something goes wrong, how do we figure out what's happening? And so I'm pretty excited to hear more about how you would tackle that.
Sure. So let's take a look at this, some more charts. What do you say?
Well, I had some preview into the deck, so I think I was anticipating them. So I think I'd say let's do it.
All right.
I must tell you, I will mention, though, that one of the problems here is that I get addicted to looking at these charts and these reports that you have. So sometimes I get distracted. So if I do sort of trail off, this one's really interesting to me, so I'll be staring at it. And if you have to wake me up to keep going on the webinar, because I'm just entranced by it.
So on the left, you got a couple of charts. There's a trend chart in marketing qualified leads. So you can see there's a record count. It's fluctuating between, say, 700 and 1,000 in this particular example. It has a time period. It's a monthly count, January to October. And then you have sales accepted leads. Again, it's a trend chart, and you can see January through October 2013, and there's a record count of sales accepted leads. So in the yellow box, if you look up at marketing qualified leads, you see that April to May, the number of leads goes up pretty significantly. So it goes up by 100. But if you look at sales accepted leads from April to May, the number is going down. That seems a little odd. That okay, something's going on here. You got more leads coming in, but sales is accepting fewer. So what does that mean? And this is the kind of analysis that you can do. So is it that there's a lot of vacation going on in sales, or there's or maybe the leads are just bad. That could be a possibility. Or somebody's not able to follow up. But if you look at the chart on the right, you can see, okay, we've got, these are lists of sales reps, and you can see, for example, Sally, salesperson's got a whole bunch of open, not contacted responses. And maybe these large numbers of open, uncontacted responses, there's some sort of hiccup going on where maybe Sally, salesperson, is super busy with closing some big deals and doesn't have time to follow up on any new leads. So this is the kind of analysis that you can do. The data uncovers some of these issues, and then you can kind of look into it to see what the reason is. But the good news is that in June, the number of sales accepted leads goes back up, so it looks like the problem was solved.
Yeah, for sure. So I got a question for you.
Sure.
Because initially my first reaction was, well, you're doing a good job with you have one of the least amount of open note not contacted, but On the other hand, Rowan has more that she's working on than you.
Right. Yeah.
See, I told you I'd mesmerized by the
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, well, I want to compliment Bonnie and Josh, but Josh has none that he's working on, so maybe he just gets less leads.
Yeah.
And I should look at, the amount of time it takes Rowan to work her leads, and maybe that's why she has more in open non-contacted.
And maybe you need to give some of Sally's salesperson's or Rowan's leads to Josh so he can start working on some deals.
Interesting. So when and then when we talk about sort of looking at these things kind of they even themselves out. I mean, I'm assuming that's kind of a best practice where I mean, at least I've seen over the years where you do get these anomaly months, right? And it's good to look at them, but it's actually more important to make sure that it goes back to its sort of regular cadence. And actually, in this case, it started to rise again.
Yeah.
But I guess it's important to figure out kind of what happened in that month. But you brought that up, and I think that's a really important thing for us to just talk about for a minute, which is, I mean, there's going to be months where there's an anomaly, right? And it's important to sort of look at things over the course of time, or what do you recommend there?
I think so. But this kind of example is we see in our customers all the time. So, for example, we had one customer that had 3 different sales organizations: small, medium, or mid-size companies, and then enterprise companies.
Yeah.
And so their small and enterprise sales operations were, there was an appearance of marketing qualified leads are going up, and sales accepted is going up, and revenue is going up in both those groups. And then there was an issue in the mid-market where marketing qualified leads are going up, sales accepted leads are going down, and also revenue is going down. So clearly there was some indication that something wasn't quite going well for that group. And so this is, again, a real example where that company said, oh, we better go find out what's going on in the mid-range group and see what we can do to try to get them back on track. And it turned out that there was an issue, and they were able to address it, and revenue started going back up again. So sometimes these, there are some hiccups in the process, and you can identify those and really make a big difference without even spending another dime on sales and marketing. It's just process and getting people to work better together.
That's a great example. It's one of those examples where anybody, when you finally can, I mean, Ned, when you finally can look, right, you can finally see what's happening, you can solve problems, and
right.
So that's awesome. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. I'm going to have you go through the conclusions, but if you don't mind, after you go through, I'm going to point out the couple that I really like and stand out to me. Is that okay with you?
Oh, of course.
Okay. All right.
Jump right in there.
Well, actually,
Okay.
I'm going to let you go, and then I already have written down the things that get me excited about what we talked about today.
Okay. So the first thing is that it's a whole lot easier to have a good working relationship between sales and marketing when both groups have access to the same information and the metrics are tracked in the same place. The issue happens when you've got different groups with different numbers and tracking them in different systems. And so when sales doesn't have visibility into the marketing system and vice versa, it's really hard for a conversation to happen. And that's why we designed the circle that way, to put all the data in the CRM system, so you have Salesforce as the one source of truth. And once you have the data, gosh, there's so much you can do with it, right? You can really work on streamlining processes and really identifying the bottlenecks. And once when you're able to actually see the data and really work on some of those things, you can really make a big difference in the revenue that you're generating.
Yeah, so that's, well, now I feel like I'm going to mention things that you already mentioned, but I do think the Salesforce as the record of truth is really important, right? Because if I've noticed one thing, is, so there are marketers who, I don't know what, it's years of having to deal with disparate systems. They're kind of okay with having to log in, look at other areas to find things, or as you've said before, they've got someone there who's aggregating everything manually into spreadsheets, and then then once again you're holding everything until you can present them in a meeting to someone because everything's everywhere. But salespeople, that is just a no-go, right? I mean, if you're gonna want them to look at something, it's got to be right in front of them, and and if it's in Salesforce, that means that they will actually look. And if you start to show them, like some of the charts we showed today, I can guarantee you, because I've been sort of laughing and taking the side of the marketing side, but I'm a sales consultant, and 65–70% of my deals are with sales leaders, and I know that as hard as they can be on the marketing organization, they do want the ability to look in Salesforce and see, that kind of stuff is really important to them. That's why they always ask you, like I'm sure one scenario we didn't talk about today is the marketer is always getting the email of, well, what's happening here, what's not happening here, and just being able to put it in Salesforce means everyone knows where to go look, and especially the salesperson. And then with that, I think you brought up, I think this is a really good point, is the sales and marketing alignment. When both sides are looking at the same metrics in at the same place, that is a huge deal because, it really came to light, it was kind of on the tip of my tongue, but it's come to light in my conversations with you, which is, well, everyone's hiding different pieces of data. It's my data versus yours. It's no data, so it's all anecdotal, and we all know who wins those arguments. The more I see this, the more I see this as like being one of the core, things that you need to provide in your organization to help bring sales and marketing together, right? It doesn't mean you'll always agree, but at least this is where fights begin, is just where it's one person's opinion versus the other, and it's unfounded, right? And so that, to me, I think that's a huge conclusion for me, right? And if I look at the examples you gave me, if sales could just look at those reports before they ran downstairs and started yelling at everyone, I mean, that's a win for the entire organization.
Absolutely. So when we started this company, I really thought that data was going to be the thing that really bridges the sales and marketing divide. I think that's a term that people use to describe the distance between sales and marketing teams. And if you're able to have this data that you can look at and share, the meaningful conversations can happen, and both teams can work much more effectively to grow revenue for their companies.
Yeah, for sure. Amen.
All right. now that we've solved the world's problems.
Yeah, well, everyone will be fine now. So let me just say this, though, on my conclusion is I love this stuff, and I think it's just terrific. And I do think that one of the things that I brought up earlier is I feel like what you guys are trying to do is, there's two kinds of, just not to make it really simple, but there's the people that don't track at all and just need an easy way to go do this. Not, nothing's easy, but you make it easier. That's one set of people. But then there's this new generation of organizations, sales and marketing folks, who do want to track the things that you're talking about. And they get pretty close, and they've made investments, and they have that desire, but they can't, right? And as you said, the problem is the systems talking to each other. And I think that, being able to solve for those two people, two sets of buyer types, you'd call them, or, two sets of sales and marketing machines, I think that's pretty exciting. So I'm very excited for you guys. Very excited for you guys. And I just had to say that at the end. I know this wasn't a full circle CRM only webinar, but I do think that that's really exciting, and that gets me, this is the second, third time that we've talked about everything. I get so excited. So I hope everyone else visits Full Circle CRM as well. And you can visit me at topohq.com, and we not only can you learn more about my company, but we do a ton of blogging on that side, and then, as we mentioned before, on funnelholic.com. So I just want to thank everyone for listening, and Bonnie, I just want to thank you. This was as much fun for me as I'm sure it'll be for everyone who attended this webinar today.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. That was great. And we love your Funnelaholics blog, so I hope everyone signs up and enjoys it as well.
I hope everyone signs up too. This is a win-win for everyone. Thanks everyone for coming today, and we look forward to you managing your funnels and having not only driving more revenue, but having a better lifestyle as a result as sales and marketing get along. Thanks everyone.